Hello there, sword friends. I have a very fun and exciting video for you today where I take a sword out of a box and tell you my initial impressions of it without it being any kind of formal review. That's the plan for this sword right here, which is supposed to be a new offering from Darksword Armory called the Baron. So bear in mind that this is sent to me as a review sample. Yal from Darksword Armory pinged me and asked me if I wanted to review it. I had a lot of fun doing the Alexandria review, and yeah, so I will link that incidentally in the description down below if you're so inclined. I've reviewed a Darksword Armory review sample before, and now I have another one to do. So anyway, plan. I'm going to take it out of the box. It's not all that exciting, and then I'm going to look at it, and I'm not going to show it you in great detail, but I'll give you some initial impressions, some out of the box stuff, and then later I will do a review and I will smack it around and break it. That's basically the plan. If you have any observations, things, suggestions, things that I should maybe try on the review or points to focus on, I will, put that in the commentary down below, because it'll give me something to kind of consider as I work towards breaking this sword eventually. Without further ado, I will find the good old unboxing knife, which is over here, and I will get to the purpose of this video, which was to take the sword out of the box. What's in the box? Have the sword the wrong direction. Was there any marking on the box? Which direction? No. It's just chance. Okay. I'm not sure if there's something else in here. Last time when I got something from Darksword Armory, it was supposed to be a prototype, but I got a lot of other paperwork with it that was like, hey, write a review and, coupons and kind of finished packaging. And since I am a dorky supply chain person, I like to see packaging. Anyway, this particular one just had some bits of brown kind of paper in it, and then the sword is wrapped up thusly. And then I've got a card here, which yep, just a card from Darksword Armory with a phone number on it, presumably if I don't know if it ends up in the lost and found. So there's a lot of paper on here. For the spirit of unboxing video, I'll try and actually capture some of this malarkey on camera. I'm just stabbing, destroying the sword before I ever get to it. This is a puzzle to get into. There must be a smarter way. Where is the tape? The end of the tape. So I'm trying to be somewhat gingerly and cut myself rather than the sword. I don't want any unsightly blemishes that I can't blame on Darksword Armory, right? So, all right. What other fun tool do I have that will solve this? Leatherman. This one's got a little skizzers in it. Oh, God, I'm going to fast forward through all this. Oh, no. This level of wrapping would suggest that Yal does not have any unwanted children. Whew, I'm sweating. Okay, well, I have only at this point looked at the packaging. Now I can look a little bit at the sword and tell you what I'm seeing. I managed not to scratch it a little bit. I did scuff a little bit of the belt. The leather feels good. It doesn't feel like cheap kind of imitation leather. Has a pleasant feeling. It's not falling out that the sword may have. Oh no, the sword doesn't have additional wrapping and stuff on it, so that's reassuring. The scabbard fits reasonably tight. We'll see if that changes. Obviously, it was in an airtight container, more or less, and so maybe as it breathes a bit, it will not be as tight. It's pretty stiff in there, so that I don't know if I could draw it particularly quickly. It's pretty snug in there, but in a way that I don't personally mind. Scabbard, this looks very similar to the other Darksword Armory scabbards that I felt This shape is a little closer, so it doesn't bite. It still feels like a good catch on something, but it's not as rough as some of the other ones with a little point on it, and it happens to look very handsome. I think the scabbard overall is really quite handsome. Yeah, nothing much else to say. I mean, it's tight, doesn't rattle, and it looks good, but we wanted to see the sword. So right away, one thing that I feel is that this does not feel crappy in the hand. This is very, has a balance and a sense to it that feels controllable and nimble, but a big long handle, you know, like I can throw it out there. Ooh, it even whistles a little bit. So the design has kind of a double fuller that runs pretty much the length of the blade and terminates up at the top. At a glance, it mostly looks like the fullers terminate evenly, but they run off just a little bit. I'll show up closer details when I get into doing the full review. Crossguard's got a pretty sizable gap. Some people care, some people don't. It's worth pointing out that that's not necessarily a historic or anything. It just comes to be something that people tend to look at in these modern reproduction style pieces. The fittings have a buffed look to them. I don't know if the Quillins are any different than the Alexandria. Obviously, one thing I will include in the review is I will be rather aggressive on the Quillins here. This was one point in the Alexandria that did not hold up particularly well, and so when I hit them, they kind of broke off, and that was one thing that Darksword Armory had committed to taking a look into and hopefully rectifying. So I will be rather aggressive with these in a similar capacity, and then if they don't break, then a less similar capacity, and I'll hit them harder. We have this pommel. I happen to really like the shape of this pommel. This one has some ledges that I kind of noticed right away that stick out a little bit beyond the guard. It doesn't bite into my fingers, but I can kind of feel a certain level of discomfort. Other bits about the guard, it has a nice swell in the middle. It's more round at the end, kind of a little more ovoid, letting you index with this top hand here. The blade, you know, I don't see at a glance a whole lot of taper to it. I don't know for sure, but just at a glance, I don't see a lot. Now, maybe that's intentional. I mean, I looked at the Alexandria. Obviously, if Darksword Armory wants to make a blade with distal taper, they can. This doesn't inherently feel cumbersome or dumb, though. And if I do a quick flex, it seems to flex in about the right portion of the blade. It's been noted a few times that blades that don't have distal taper are often looked on as bad. And in some cases, I mean, some of the previous reviews I've done, they're blade profiles that probably should, and then don't have them, and that's where you can kind of chalk it against. I don't know if this shape should or shouldn't have, but this does notably not have at least a lot of profile taper as I'm looking down. It maintains pretty thick out into the tip, though there's some taper to it, just not a substantial amount, and it feels, I mean, overall pretty rigid. So as a thrust-centric blade, I mean, given this kind of profile, it makes me think that it's good at poking things, and I feel like I have some tip control over it. I don't know cutting-wise how well it'll do. It feels sharp-ish. I'm getting the sensation that if I were to take this to a pool noodle, that it's probably going to bat a pool noodle around. And some of the thicker water bottles, it's got that kind of edge profile, like on a milk jug or something like that. Some of the softer plastics, it's gonna move through it reasonably well because of decent geometry. I'm guessing I'm gonna have to sharpen it to do well at, you know, pool noodle kind of thing. But I don't see a big, giant, gross secondary bevel. It looks like it has the profile to take a good sharpening, even from somebody maybe less experienced at it like myself. So we'll see, but I'm guessing it'll have a similar, I don't know if it feels sharper or not. I can't remember what the Alexandria came with sharpness-wise. This is just not, like I can pinch it pretty hard safely. I wouldn't want to run my fingers on it. It's sharp enough that it can cut me, but I mean, it's not the kind of razor sharpness that maybe you want out of a sword. It does have very handsome fullers, though, and as I look down the planes, generally the surface doesn't wiggle around. There is some rippling and some deviation to the lines in the fullering. I mean, you got to be kind of anal about it to see it, and I suppose it'd be helpful if I kind of showed it or at least did it in the camera. So it's tougher for me to see, but I do see rippling that indicates to me that, you know, somebody is probably working these on a grinder and trying to get them out. At a glance, at a distance, it doesn't look ripply or wavy. It looks pretty well uniform, but in the light, you can kind of make out some deviation in the lines. Anyway, that's, I suppose, initial impressions. I thought it would feel dumber in the hand. I'll have to get weapon dynamics, computer measurements, and that kind of stuff to kind of convey this, because it looks like a big imposing sword, and it feels pretty comfortable and light. But it doesn't have a lot of taper, and it's pretty sizable. But it feels really good and thought out in the hand. I happen to like the way it feels. Right away, though, I can tell that the edge is not going to be sharp enough for some folks that are going to get mad about it. And some of the area that the grip connects, you know, I don't like feeling ledges or anything on here, and I feel one slight one, minor perhaps, but worth noting. And then the crossguard it's not a bad execution, particularly for swords that are in this price category. At least I'm speculating on what the price category is. I don't remember, but generally speaking, Darksword Armory stuff is between $500 and $800, depending on a bunch of stuff. This configuration with a scabbard and belt is probably more than if you just buy the sword. And for that, I mean, I understand that there's only so much you're going to be able to do with getting the crossguards fit up very precisely, and it's a point that you'd have to invest money into, and maybe people aren't willing to spend it, would rather save. So as it is, I don't see anything bad, and in fact, it feels, it's handsome at a distance, and it feels pretty good in the hand. So those are my initial impressions. Handsome at a distance and feels good in the hand. And I've noted some of the basic observations. So again, I'm going to do a more formalized review testy thing, my normal shtick on this. I'm going to whack these quillins pretty hard. I know that's on the list of things to do. If there's other things you'd like to see me do with this sword, other points you want me to focus on, throw it in the commentary down below. It's always helpful to know that kind of stuff. And if it's within the realm of possibility, I will see if I can do it. Kind of like the shape. It almost looks like they have like little rounded shoulders in here. Anyway, handsome sword. I like the double fuller. It feels, yeah, I'm going to go play with this some more. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. Just some initial impressions. Hopefully it's interesting. As always, cheers and thanks for watching.